wow, what do you know? It's time for the Pocket Knife Show. Hey, it's Mike on the mic again for another episode of the Pocket Knife Podcast. I've got to get this episode recorded or there'll be nothing for the 331 million humans who reside in the good old US of A to do on this Black Friday morning. Right. The likelihood of even 331 of those people listening to this brief message is pretty slim. With all the shopping to be done early on this most festive of days, I'll feel blessed if 3 of my family members tune in. Hi, girls. There were 2 words in my opening statement which you likely paid little attention to. You've heard these 2 words paired up so many times, they're not in the least noteworthy. Got to. That's what I said about putting my thoughts out into cyberspace. I've got to get this episode done. The words are words of obligation, and they stir up all kinds of images of drudgery, difficulty, dislike. Think about how you use these words. I've got to mow my grass before the neighbors call the city on me. I've got to go to church with my mom on Sunday so she'll quit nagging me. I've got to pay my gas bill or I'll be shivering in my housecoat next week. I've got to. I recently read a short essay by Zig Ziglar entitled, questioningly, Got to or Get to? America's man of enthusiasm began his article with a short story about a businesswoman who often turned down invitations to meetings at a certain time each day because, as she put it, I've got to visit with my mother. When her mother died, her attitude toward those morning visits changed. She wanted to visit with her mom, but couldn't. Having told this story, Ziegler suggested a change in vocalization concerning things which may be obligations, but don't have to be dreaded. Let me read just a little from his pep talk. Her story, he's talking about the woman who had to go and visit her mother. Her story makes us realize that pleasurable things are get-tos. I get to play golf today, or I get to go on vacation this week. Burdensome things are got-tos. I've got to go to work at 7 a.m. tomorrow, or I've got to clean house. Since perceptions influence thinking and performance, he writes, try this. Instead of saying, I've got to go to work, think about people who have no job. Then you can enthusiastically change it to, I get to go to work tomorrow. If somebody invites you to go fishing, instead of saying, no, I've got to go to my child's game on Saturday, think about the fact that someday your child will grow up and you won't be able to go to his or her games. Then it's easy to change it to, get to. Though this isn't really a spiritual practice, I think making this simple change of vocabulary could make living for Jesus more enjoyable. I've got to read my Bible is less than motivating, but what about I get to hear what God thinks? I've got to pray sounds negative when compared to I get to talk with God. I've got to give an offering sounds legalistic, but I get to participate in the work of the church is liberating. I've got to go to church makes doing it a chore, but what about I get to worship God with his people? The people of Israel went up to Jerusalem 3 times each year for festivals. They went for Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths. I'm not going to go into detail about each of these. I mention them only because they were obligations, and I'm sure some in ancient times hated the interruption of their daily routines. Maybe the majority were happy about these happenings, but I'm guessing I've got to go to Jerusalem for Passover had to have slipped from a few thousand lips each year. There are a series of songs in the book of Psalms which the Jewish people recited or sang as they approached the temple for each annual celebration. We call these songs, Psalms 120 to 134, the songs of ascent. Each of them reflects on God's goodness and upon the privileges of being loved and cared for and protected by him. One of these songs, Psalm 122, begins with a get-to kind of statement. Listen to the words which come first from the worshippers' mouths as they repeat this ancient poem. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You can almost hear shouts of woohoo, or more likely, I suppose, hallelujah, as you read this single verse. The attitude is so positive. I was glad, energetic. Let's go. As you move through life today and tomorrow and the next day, I think that's Sunday, give this a try. Repeat Psalm 122:1 each morning as a reminder of the joy there is in being with God and His people. Then, throughout that day, when going to church comes to mind, think or say out loud, I get to go to church. Maybe you can use a few get-tos on other things which seem a bit obligatory as well. See if Zig's suggested switch from got to get to makes a difference in your level of excitement and zeal for life. It'll be Black Friday when this episode posts. Maybe I'll go shopping with my family rather than be a stuck in the mud. It's not often, after all, that I get to spend time with some of them, and they're fun people to be around. And I'll get to annoy the non-morning people with cheery hellos as I wander around sipping coffee and smiling, and not buying a bunch of stuff. Maybe I shouldn't do that. I'd hate to irritate those who've got to shop till they drop.
Oh no, it's sad, I know we've come to the end of the show.
See you next time.